This episode is brought to you by the Wholesome Fertility Method online program. This program includes video courses on understanding Chinese medicine patterns and how this reflects on cycle charting. It also includes foods shown to benefit fertility health, which products to avoid, supplements and herbs that are shown to improve sperm and egg quality, acupressure points, and essential oil recipes to optimize fertility health, mindfulness, breathing exercises, and much, much more. I'm providing a second round of spots, which include live coaching calls with the program for a limited time. To find out more, visit www.thewholesomefertilitymethod.com. Episode number 40 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. My guest today is Tara McCann. Tara is a women's health coach specializing in preconception health and fertility. Tara struggled over 2 years to get pregnant with her first child. All through that journey, Tara learned to trust her body's intuition, nourish herself with food, and speak up for what she knew her body needed. After having her children, Tara found health coaching and immediately knew that this was the support she needed on her fertility journey. She was so inspired that she became a health coach herself in 2014. Tara has been empowering women to nourish themselves and optimize their health for fertility ever since. So welcome to the podcast, Tara.
It's great to be here. I'm so excited.
So I know that you have a very personal story and journey that led you to the work that you're doing today. Can you share your story?
I would love to. So when my husband and I had been married for about a year, we decided, hey, it's time. We should start getting ready to have a family. And so we decided to get pregnant. And this was in the fall. And I, in my head, just, assumed that we would be pregnant by Christmas. We were both healthy and I had regular cycles. And I just assumed that everything would just fall into place. And it turns out that it didn't fall into place quite so easily for us. So we spent just about a year trying on our own. And then a friend had recommended a new OB to me, someone I hadn't ever seen before. And he had helped her on her fertility journey. So we went and saw him. And the first thing he wanted to do was to just immediately put me on Clomid. And so I wasn't ready for that. So I knew in my heart somewhere that my body could do more, even though we'd been trying for a year and it had been unsuccessful and it had been really frustrating. I knew that I wasn't ready for that. And so we decided not to work with him. And so I did some more research on my own and I found an acupuncturist and I started changing my diet and taking care of myself a little bit better. And so we did that for 9 or 10 months. And along the way, I learned about my cycle because I was charting my cycle a lot more. I changed my diet. I went gluten-free. The acupuncture healing was also really helpful for me. And then, 9 or 10 months later, then I was ready. I was ready for more medical intervention because I knew that I had done a lot more and I knew that my body was in a different space. And I was ready to reach out for that intervention a little bit more. And so we went through 4 rounds of IUI. And so those were unsuccessful. And then I had to take a month off, which when you're trying and you've been trying for a really long time and you have to take a month off, it was completely devastating for me. I had to there was a polyp in my uterus and they thought that was maybe getting in the way of implantation. And so I had to have a hysteroscopy and have that polyp removed. And then the next cycle was our last try at IUI before we moved to IVF. And from all of the work I had done in the previous couple of years on my cycle, I knew that I didn't have a really long second part of my cycle, so I wasn't really making a lot of progesterone. So on that
Mm-hmm.
last attempt at IUI, I asked for progesterone, and my doctor agreed,
Mm.
and we got pregnant. So it was a
That's
long,
amazing.
yeah, it was amazing.
You know what I love about the story is that you took charge because you knew what to ask for.
Yeah, and that's the part that I really, in my work, that's the part that I love, helping women, empowering them to take charge of their own story and to
Hmm.
learn and trust what's going on in their own bodies, because I think it is empowering. And I think that we can be partners with
Hmm.
our healthcare providers. But I think so often there's this mentality of the doctor knows best and they have this procedure that's in place and I just have to follow that. But I think the more knowledge and the more trust we have of what's going on in our own bodies, the more that we can ask for what we need. And so that was a huge lesson
Right.
that I learned. I
Yeah,
walked away from
it's
the
true.
medication at first, and then came back to it when I was ready, and then asked for what I needed.
I love that. I really, really love that. It's great because you're so right. People think or assume that, they go to a professional and they're supposed to know everything. And somehow you did your research, you followed your gut instinct, you observed your cycle, and that led you to know exactly what you needed. And even after all those years, what are the chances that, it wouldn't be that? It had to be that, because you got pregnant.
I did get pregnant. And, the doctor, it wasn't something that he suggested. It wasn't something
Yeah.
that was in his thought process. And so I did have to ask for it, and I did have to advocate for myself. And,
Yeah.
it took some time to get to know my body, and it takes some time,
Yeah.
with charting and stuff to understand what's on in your body. So I think that even though those years were really hard, I think it was also really valuable information and me learning to trust my body again.
Yeah, and it also takes a lot of courage to ask for things medically.
It does. And for me, it was kind of like, well, if we're going to jump to IVF, I want to try everything that I know possible right now before, because we
Yeah.
were starting that process of thinking about, in the new year, because this was, October, in the new year, we were going to start IVF. And so I really wanted to ask for that. And normally that's not me, but I
Hmm.
knew that this was kind of the last piece of it that I felt that I needed. And so I really felt strongly about it, even though my doctor had dismissed my charts and he had said, it doesn't matter. I just really felt strongly about that. And I want to help women get to that place where they can advocate for themselves, because they live in their bodies every day, 24/7.
Exactly.
And so I think
Yeah.
we dismiss what we know about our bodies too easily.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And what's interesting is, I do Eastern medicine. My husband does Western medicine. He's an emergency medicine physician. And I always talk to him. I like to pick his brain. And I think he's a great doctor, just because, well, not just because he's my husband, but just because he's very humble.
Hmm.
And he tells me that he'll have people come into the hospital and they'll have a sense, even though from his perspective they don't have whatever it is that they think, but if they come in and they have this really, really strong feeling and are adamant about it, he says he always listens, because a lot of times people will have like an innate intuition that something's going on.
Hmm.
And he said, and that he's noticed just from his own work that a lot of times it really does lead to something that otherwise nobody would have checked.
Hmm. I love
So I
that.
think it's
I
very
wish I
interesting.
wish
Yeah,
more medical doctors would listen like that, because
I
I
know.
think
I
that's
know.
that's a piece that's missing, I think, in our healthcare, is that because we do there's this, we put so much trust in the doctor knows everything, and then we,
Hmm.
trust ourselves so little that we go in. But I think also we also get dismissed, as women, we go into a doctor and we say, I'm having painful periods, or I'm having long periods, or I'm not having cycles. And they're like, oh, it's fine. Like they just dismiss
Right,
us and
because
don't really listen.
yeah, they don't learn that way. They learn a certain way, and some of the things that they learn are really amazing,
Hmm.
and they're helpful. They don't learn everything. They don't Some of them don't even learn nutrition, and so they only learn what they know. So, or
Right,
so that's what they use and they just go based on that. So everything else doesn't really make sense to them. And so
right,
that's where I always say there's always strengths in every person that you go to. They have their own strength. And you have to know what that strength is and be informed before you go and realize that everybody has a blind spot.
right, right. Everybody is coming at it from their own perspective and from their
Yeah.
own knowledge and training and their own life story. And so I think that's really true that we all have that. We all have that going in, but I think when we're working with other professionals, we have to know that everybody's coming from their own viewpoint. And so knowing
Exactly.
and being able to advocate for yourself, saying, okay, I understand what your viewpoint is, but this is what I need. This is the piece I need from you.
Yes, exactly. And I've heard other naturopathic doctors say, that they partner with their patients, and I love that idea. And I
Hmm.
think that regardless if the doctors are going to be like that or not, you should think of it for yourself that way when you go to the doctor, that
Yeah.
you have a place. So, you were mentioning, so you had figured it out for yourself and got pregnant.
We did. We got pregnant and had a beautiful baby girl. And so then um, we knew we were going to grow our family. And so, since it had taken a really long time to get pregnant the first time, we decided to start trying. And my body finally knew what to do, and we got pregnant right away. So, I had two pregnancies really close together. My girls are
Amazing.
18 months apart. Yeah. And so, after that, in breastfeeding for almost 4 years and all of those things, my body was really run down. And so I actually found a health coach for myself because I
Mhm.
needed some help and I was having some problems. And when I was being coached, I was like, oh my goodness, this is what I needed. This is what I wanted. I wanted someone to be able
Mhm.
to help me walk through this process. This is what I wanted on my fertility journey. I wanted someone to walk through this process with me. I wanted someone to listen to me. I wanted someone to give me help when I was ready for help. And somebody
Mhm.
who could help me investigate in ways that I hadn't thought of. Um, and so I went and got trained as a health coach. So, and I have a medical background, so I was an occupational therapist for years before that. So it fit right
Oh,
into
wow.
the
Yeah.
medical piece of what I was doing and all of my previous training, and all of that informs what I do now. Um,
Right.
and so I brought that piece, and I've brought them together and giving women the support that I wished I had.
Yeah, amazing. That's great. And I find that a lot of times, the practitioners start out as patients.
I think so because I think that the journey changes. I mean, for myself, it changed me so much that
Mhm.
I couldn't imagine doing anything else because I remembered how lonely it was and how hard it was and how when I got on the computer and tried to Google things that there was just an overwhelming amount of information and
Right.
I couldn't figure it out. And the pieces of my journey where I did truly trust myself were the pieces that I finally was listening and I was finally tuning into that. But I think the Google rabbit hole can be completely overwhelming. And if
Oh,
other,
yeah.
family and friends are giving advice too, then it can be really hard.
It definitely, for sure. 100%. It'll also take you away from your own inner knowing. You're talking about the intuition that you
Yeah,
feel. Sometimes when you get too many messages, it just distracts your own innate knowing of what you should be doing, and it makes it worse,
it
really.
does. It does make it much worse.
So, what have you found to be life changing, through your choices on your journey? Like, that you've learned from your health coach? What was the most life changing aspect to that journey?
I think through my fertility journey and then my work with the health coach, I think the biggest thing was slowing down enough to really tune in to what I was feeling
Mm-hmm.
and trusting that what I was feeling was legitimate and was what, and trusting that and following through with it and taking action steps to change that. So part of my journey was I went gluten free when I was trying to get pregnant. And I had always, we talked about this a little bit before, like in the back of my head, I always knew that I reacted to gluten, but I was like, never
Mm-hmm.
had the real, desire or something that sparked like, hey, you should do this now, until I couldn't get pregnant. And then I was like, okay, I'm listening now. I'll do this now. So I think that trust piece that comes in, trusting your body, trusting that
Mm-hmm.
and then just taking the time to listen to what your body's really telling you, because I think we get really busy and then we get really
Right.
overwhelmed, and then we feel like our body's giving us mixed messages,
Right.
because it's information overload. But if we take time and start to practice trusting ourselves and just listening in, we can create that space where we can really hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And what did you do to ground yourself?
I think a lot of it was just slowing down. I'm not a great journaler, but I do journal. That's one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that helps me to slow down. Um, just taking time with my breath is another thing that really helps me, to slow down, so that even if I don't have 20 minutes to do a meditation, I can ground myself with 10 breaths, and that really helps me a lot. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the other thing is like building a practice of trust with your body. So,
Mm-hmm.
if you're hungry, get something to eat. If you're thirsty, go get some water. If you have to go to the
Right.
bathroom, like go to the bathroom. So it's just these
Yeah.
little bits of trust, building that trust with yourself, so that when your body sends you a signal, you
Mm-hmm.
act on that signal. And the more you do those little pieces, the more you'll be able to hear the bigger things your body's trying to tell you, so that your body doesn't have to scream. Like my body was screaming at me about gluten, but I
Yeah.
wasn't ready to hear it until I couldn't get
Mhm.
pregnant. But if you're listening into
Right.
the little pieces of, are you thirsty? Then when your body starts talking to you about, hey, you're having PMS and it might be this, like you start to listen more
Right.
to the bigger things.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I like that practice because in Chinese medicine, we always say, when you're born, your body knows exactly what it needs to do, and your body's a self-healing mechanism. The
Mhm.
only thing that gets in the way is years of chronic habits of going against the flow of your own body, of your energy, and not listening to your body. When you're tired, staying up. When you're hungry, not eating, or vice versa, eating when you're not hungry, and
Right.
just going against your own body's cues. So starting the habit small
Mhm.
sounds like a realistic way to do that and to implement that, and to get in a habit of listening to your body. I think that that's brilliant.
Yeah, and I think we have to build it as small things. And they sound really simple, but how many of us dismiss those signals, especially rest and sleep and things like that that you were just talking about. So the building a small practice of it then
Yeah,
can lead to expansion of that practice.
it is. And I think it's also realistic because nowadays I just feel like every goal has to be bite-sized because there's so much distraction going on in the world.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really smart to start small. And then once you start small, you start to recognize it, and you start to change the pattern over time.
Yeah, and I think it builds success more quickly. Like,
Yeah.
instead of having a big goal that seems really far away, and then you try for a little while, and then you get really discouraged and you think there's something wrong because you can't reach this really big goal. But if you start with something really small, it's like, oh, I can do this. And then you do a little bit more. And it's like, oh, I can do this. And so
Right.
I think
Exactly.
building that practice, because your life is there's this amazing quote called your that says your life is your practice. So it's the things that you
Hmm.
practice in your life that create your life. And so I really think that that's a big piece of what I try and tune into.
Yeah, definitely. And so what elements do you include in your coaching? So now that you do fertility coaching and you
Hmm.
have like, say, a client, what elements do you include? How do you start? What's your process of working with clients?
Yeah. So my process is the first few sessions are just really getting to know where they are on their journey and where, helping them to figure out what they think is their first step. Because again, that intuition of, I think I need this first. And so for some people, it might be the nutrition piece of learning how to bring all the nutrition into their meal planning that they need to support their body for healthy hormones and growing and maturing healthy eggs and all of the things that we need to get pregnant. For some people, it's that tuning into their cycle and figuring out when they're actually fertile in their cycle and all the information that your cycle could give you, whether one part is too long or too short, or if sleep is really impacting their cycle. For other people, it's tuning into what they need for self-care, because I think self-care has become really trendy, and so it's like, oh, self-care, I'm going to go and get a massage, which a massage is an amazing thing. And I'm not saying that it's not self care, but for some people, that may not be self care. And so, really helping women
Mhm.
tune into what feels good for them. And then the other piece that we work on is getting rid of things in their environment that might be impacting their hormones and their ability to get pregnant. So, things in their personal care products or in their kitchen or in their house or their workspace that might be impacting their hormones. And so those are kind of the four main areas that we look at. But the main thing, no matter where we start, it's really the process of tuning into what their body's telling them and then taking and making those small steps so that they can be successful in getting their body to where they want it to be.
Absolutely. And what are some of the biggest blocks to healing that you've noticed with your clients?
I think one of the big blocks that we talked about before is the Google rabbit hole and not knowing where to start. And so
Mhm.
that piece of it, like, should I do keto? Should I do a paleo diet? Like, which diet should I do? And instead of working within one like diet paradigm, I really want them to be noticing how their body feels. Like, does this meal give you energy? And did you sleep
Mhm.
better when you ate like this? And did you wake up more refreshed when you ate like this? So that process of really tuning into themselves is a big piece. And so that's something that I find that can be a block if people aren't necessarily tuned into that part of themselves. And now also the consistency and understanding that hormonal changes and changes in our body take time, and that
Mhm. Right.
there's nothing that's a magic potion or a magic meal or anything about it is magical. It's that consistency over time. And so I think that
Mhm.
is the process that people need support in, because they're like, well, I did this, for 3 weeks or a month and it didn't work. But in reality, it takes 3 months for your egg to mature. So it can take, 3 to 6 months for your hormones to shift and all of this. And so taking that time and knowing that it's going to take time, I think people are often in a rush to get things changed, which I understand. Like when you want to get pregnant, like you want to be pregnant now. And I get
Yeah.
that. Um, and so, one of the messages that I want to get out is helping women who are thinking about having a family but aren't really trying to conceive yet. So, when you're thinking about it, when you're a year or
Right.
two ahead of time, like what are
Yeah.
the changes you can start making that are going to support that transition to motherhood and that ability to conceive going forward?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that that's something, it's a paradigm that I think needs to be, at least people need to become educated about, because a lot of times people don't consider it until they decide to get pregnant. And then when they decide to get pregnant, it is also just a societal thing. We have learned, and products are created for quick fixes. Everything is a quick fix nowadays, and it's instant gratification. And it doesn't work like that with the rhythms of our bodies, and it does take time. And And I always say if you could catch it before you plan to do it and prepare, I always say if you prepare the soil well, you're going to get a lot healthier of a garden. And not only that, you really do want to make sure you prepare just for the fact that you're creating a human. And if things aren't done right beforehand, you don't want to mess with that. You really want to give the fetus the best possible chance you can give him or her.
Yeah.
So I feel really strongly about that as well. It's not something that you can kind of rush through. It is something that needs patience, and it's worth that patience. You know, it really makes a huge difference.
It does make a huge difference. And the genes that you can turn on and off with your food choices and your sleep choices and your movement choices and all of that kind of stuff can have lasting impacts for your children and your grandchildren, even just the way that our genetics work. And
Yeah.
as you were talking about that paradigm shift, I think that there's a lot of misconceptions out there, like the only thing I need to do to get pregnant is to stop preventing pregnancy, because there's this
Right.
mindset around pregnancy there's almost a fear mindset, in the way we talk about it. Like, I had a pregnancy scare, or, I missed some birth control. Am I going to get pregnant this month? There's this fear around it. And energetically, I believe that our bodies don't shift that quickly. We don't shift that quickly
Mm-hmm.
from preventing and pushing it away and not wanting to get pregnant and this fear of pregnancy to that welcoming, I want to be pregnant, I'm ready to start a family. Like, I don't think that our bodies don't shift that quickly. And so energetically, even, and because of that, the paradigm that's out there around us and the myths that we are told, that hormonal birth control isn't going to mess with our fertility, and it may not, but it might for some
Right.
people. And that if you're that all you have to do is stop preventing, and then you're going to get pregnant immediately, which was kind of my mindset. I'm like, oh, we're stopping preventing, so that means we'll get pregnant
Mm-hmm.
quickly. So all of
Right.
these things make us not think about the preparation piece of it. And then when we start trying, and then we start being unsuccessful, then then there's just so much shame that comes on ourselves, because there's this paradigm that we should get pregnant easily, and then when we don't, then it's got to be our fault. Like, I did something wrong and my body is
Right.
broken, and what's wrong with me? And so I think that there's a lot of that we can work through prior to getting pregnant, just taking that time and having that knowledge that our body takes time to adjust.
Exactly. And there is also a really important aspect, which is alignment. And a lot of times I'll talk to people who have gone through the challenges and at the time feel like something's wrong with me, and then eventually have a child. And I mean, have you ever thought to yourself, if I wouldn't have gone through all of this, I wouldn't have had my specific children with their specific genetics and their specific everything, in the alignment, and also the fact that you've learned so much about your own body because of this. So in
Yeah.
a sense, it's like a gift.
Yeah. It is a gift. And when you're in the middle of it, it's really hard to see it as a gift.
Hmm.
Definitely. But yeah, now that I look back at it now, it, it brought me to this work that I do now, which I love. And I wouldn't have had that had I not had my challenges. And I do
Yeah.
think about that, energetically, there's the connection between you and the children you get. And so, yeah, I wouldn't have had those children if I had gotten pregnant at a different time. So, yeah, I think it's an interesting thought process.
Yeah. And the reason I bring it up is because I just want to give some hope, because it always seems to be a lot more apparent after the fact,
Right.
and during feels like torment. And
Yes.
so if somebody can hear that and feel some kind of hope that everything happens and unfolds in a way that, look, I mean, if it wasn't for what you went through, you wouldn't be doing this incredibly important work, and you wouldn't have your specific children that you have today. I just, if it could help somebody out there listening,
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think that that is something that is incredibly important to hear. So I think that's great.
And so, what is one habit that you think every woman should consider when trying to conceive?
So the biggest thing that we've been talking about that I really believe in is the tuning into your own intuition and that practice
Mhm.
of knowing what your body needs. And so tuning into yourself and tuning out all the extraneous information that you're getting so that you can make choices based on that. And you can create a life and a support system around what you know you need, because that lasts you, into motherhood and beyond, because you've
Right.
created this support system of what you know nourishes you with food and the movement that your body loves. And, you've created an environment around you and a support system with your partner and with your family that you can say, hey, this is a really stressful time for me. I need this. And it's already that kind of habit that is in place for you. So it's
Hmm.
that creation of that support network for yourself for the rest of your life. So it's a big piece for getting pregnant and for conceiving and for having a healthy pregnancy, but it's also just
Hmm.
this lifetime support network and knowing yourself better, that I think serves you forever.
Absolutely. I feel very strongly about that as well. And which is one of the reasons I love meditation so much, because it's just such a great tool to tuning in. It really is, because then because your body's always speaking to you in one form or another. Like you'll feel tense if something doesn't feel right, or if you're going against your grain or something that's not aligned with you.
Mhm.
And so it's really important to kind of tune into what your body's telling you, because your body doesn't analyze it like your mind does.
Right. And sometimes
Yeah.
our mind may overanalyze it a little bit, but I think that the tuning in process is really important.
Yeah, well, that's why the mind will start to take you away from the truth sometimes, because
Right.
it overdoes it. But the
Right.
body won't lie.
Exactly. And the more you tune in, the more subtle the messages can be. They don't have to be your body screaming at you. And so I think that
Yeah.
that daily practice of taking time in meditation, taking quiet time to, just journal, stream of consciousness, whatever you need to write, creating that time and that space in your daily life is incredibly important.
Yes, definitely. And so now what you offer, is it online coaching, basically anybody internationally?
Yeah, so I offer online coaching on the phone or here locally where I am, and so the
Mhm.
program I do is 12 sessions, and so depending how much time someone has in preparation, we can do those 12 sessions every week, so like over 3 months, or if you're thinking, that you would like to get pregnant a little bit further out, then we can take some time and take 6 months and meet every other week and really create that
Mhm.
practice in your life.
And how can people find you?
So my website is taramccannwellness.com. And then I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. And my handle for both those platforms is at Tara McCann Wellness.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm sure this is going to inspire a lot of people to tune in, and I feel, it's kind of like mindfulness of yourself and your body. You cannot go wrong by tuning in and listening to yourself, because your body has its own wisdom. So I love your message, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Great. I had a great time. I'm so glad I was able to come and chat with you.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to leave a review. Reviews are everything to podcasters. You can find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com. And please be on the lookout for my online course and program. This course has emerged from everything that I've been using for the fertility program I now offer at my office. I wanted to consolidate all of my suggestions and coaching and put it into a form that anyone can purchase and use. It was important for me to encompass key fertility health factors, as well as guide you in implementing changes in your routine that are shown to boost fertility while being realistic and user-friendly. I will be offering this course with and without coaching. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com, where you can find the subscription form. I thank you so much for listening in and hope you have a beautiful day.